Welcome to another episode of our Fearless Immunity Masterclass, where this week we are going to be focusing on posture, ergonomics, understanding the spine and your nervous system. And this is one of the things that I think is really important because we've walked through bacteria, viruses, how your body functions, how to survive the holidays, and just kind of all-encompassing understanding how your body works. So as chiropractors, I think it's incredibly important that we also address this. And so we're going to be breaking down today information on just like basically how do spinal injuries happen, what can you do about them, what are things that you can do on a daily basis to make sure that your body is functioning at its optimum, and making sure that you're not putting yourself in a position where you could be developing things like arthritis or degeneration, or creating compensation patterns within your body that might ultimately lead to a major injury, which could be a big problem then. And that could be, like disc herniations or bulges, or, even something more severe. So those are things where if we can really stay proactive with how we're taking care of our body on a physical, on just a physical neurological side, then we know that we are doing everything within our power to make sure that we are maintaining our overall health, right? And so ultimately that's going to affect our stress levels. It's going to affect our immune system. It's going to affect just how well our body is able to metabolically function and just continue on, ideally without setting ourselves up for what we talked about a couple weeks ago of just like chronic health conditions, maybe disease processes. We got really informational about understanding how inflammation impacts the body and just some of the things that we are doing on a day-to-day basis that can be increasing our risk for some of those things. And so that's why today we're going to focus on the structural aspect of how our body actually works and functions, because as chiropractors, we're really good at that. So that's what we're going to get into today. So more importantly, most people come to us because they've got pain, right? So they walk through our door in pain, and our goal is to get you out of pain as fast as possible. But big picture, we want to make sure that your body has the ability to function like it's supposed to. And so we are chiropractors, but we're also doctors of the nervous system, right? And so the reason that we care about your spine is because your spine protects your spinal cord and your nerves and your brain, which creates your nervous system. And so we know that if there is any sort of maybe added stress, added tension, misalignment, anything going on in that spine, it is putting added stress, unnecessary stress on the nervous system. And so these are things that we want to focus on because we want to make sure that, your body is able to move appropriately without any sort of interference, make sure that your nerves are able to communicate to not only just your muscles, but your cell, your organs, and every other tissue in your body. And this also is going to impact how well we communicate with each other, how well we move, how we're able to basically experience life, right? And so if we start to see any sort of conditions developing that are just affecting the nervous system as a whole, we want to address that. And so we don't just look at your spine. When patients come in and say, oh, it just hurts right here, doc, just right here, I'm not just going to zone in just on that one spot that might be the only thing that you have going on, but I want to figure out why. How did this get here? What happened? Why does it hurt right there? And is there a bigger problem going on? And is that one problem, is that it's kind of the chicken or the egg? Is that the real problem, or was that the symptom and the compensation from something that's more underlying? And so that's why we look at your entire spine, we look at your entire body, because we want to get down to the root cause of what's actually going on. And so that starts from above down. So in chiropractic, we call it ADIO. So we look at our health, we look at our spine, we look at our nervous system above down, so brain down, and then inside out. And so that's one of the things that we're going to break down today of how does your body work on multiple different levels, and how can we make sure that you understand that. So if your body's giving you a signal that something is wrong, you're not just covering it up, you're actually listening to your body. Body awareness is a big deal for overall health and understanding what's going on. Okay?
There is a very interesting field that is called biopsychology that is studying how the brain is communicating with the rest of the body and how your behavior is a reflection of the function of the nervous system. So we're going to dig deeper into how the nervous system is working. So your nervous system is divided in two, the central nervous system, which is the brain and the spinal cord, and the peripheral nervous system, which is all the nerves coming out of the spine going to your muscles, organs, and other tissues. There is a lot of different structures within the brain. For example, the brainstem, which is made of the midbrain, the pons, and the medulla. The medulla is located right at the top of the spinal cord in the lower part of the brainstem, which controls many autonomic functions like heart rate, breathing, and blood pressure. Since your brain and your spinal cords are the most two important organs in the body that are controlling everything, they have to be heavily protected. The brain is protected by the skulls and the meninges, and the spinal cord, which runs down the back, needs to be protected, but also needs movements. So there's muscle, ligament, tendon, vertebrae, and meninges that are protecting the spinal cord. So one of the effects of chronic stress is muscle tension and contraction, which can lead to uneven pressure on the skeleton, which in turn leads to subluxation, which can stress your spinal cord. So when your spine is misaligned, the nervous system is not able to properly send messages throughout the body. So your central nervous system and your peripheral nervous system are not communicating properly. So your body is not going to be able to function and work efficiently. There's also different parts in your brain that have different that control different functions of the body, but also controls your behaviors. So your frontal lobe, for example, that is at the front of the brain, is associated with reasoning, motor skills, cognition, expressive language, but it's also what is executing body movements. And it's the area of the brain that affects your ability to have self-control and avoid risks.
And what we've heard is that the frontal lobe takes a while to develop. So if you're currently at home living with, say, a teenager that is exhibiting any of these, inabilities of self-control or avoid risks or expressive language, it may just be because their frontal lobe's not fully developed yet.
Yep. And then the parietal lobe, which is the middle section of the brain, is more associated with tactile and sensory information like pressure, touch, pain, and it's processing body senses. The temporal lobe, which is the bottom section and the side section of the brain, is the audition, the sound, and what we hear. It's also where you form your memories. And then the occipital lobe, which is the back portion of the brain, is associated with visual stimuli and information.
And so what he was talking about with tension causing issues. So a lot of times what we see when patients come in and they've got really tight traps, right? And they're holding so much tension right through here. And then they start to get a tension headache. That's why that tension comes all the way from the shoulders up to that occipital lobe, that occiput right at the back of the skull. It starts to pull on tension and put a ton of tension on that posterior side. That's why often with a tension headache, not only does it come all the way around, but then sometimes you have visual stuff with it because it's putting pressure on that occipital lobe right through there, and it can cause visual changes.
So like you can see, your brain and behavior are directly linked, and the spinal misalignments can cause interference and in the communication from the brain to the rest of the body, which can impact your thinking, your behavior, your ability to control your behavior, your mindset, and more. So if there is misalignments, that can create that vicious circle. The spine, like we said, is protecting your spinal cord, and your spinal cord has nerves coming out of it that are going to all the organs. So, for example, in the upper section of the spine, the cervical spine, that's nerves going to your ears, eyes, nose, throat. In the lower section of the neck, it's the nerves going down to your arms and your fingers. Upper middle back is our nerves going to your lungs, your heart. In the middle back, it's going to your stomach, to your kidneys, liver. In the lower back, the lumbar spine, that's nerves going down to your guts, to your reproductive organs, and nerves going down to your legs. So everything is connected. If there is a problem, a misalignment in your upper cervical, that can affect how your guts are functioning or how your lower back is functioning. So that's why we look at the whole picture and not just where the pain is at.
Yeah. I think it's interesting, like with that, I've had patients come in and they've had, sciatic pain. That's a big thing that we see a lot of times in the office. And as I'm going through their paperwork, it's one of those things that's very interesting when you start seeing that they've had low back pain for years that turned into sciatic pain. And then you start looking at it and you kind of read some of the other things that they've been dealing with symptom-wise, and they've got digestive issues, they've got reproductive issues going on. And so those things, there's a definite correlation with if there's dysfunction happening in the whole lumbar spine and that lower portion of your back, whether that is from a misalignment, right? Whether if that's inflammation, whether that's stress and tension in that area, it's making the body have to work so much harder to not only deal with the pain, but then function properly. And so that's one of the things that we look at is, yes, pain is what brought you into the office, but if you're in pain, that means that there is massive dysfunction that's happening in that entire area of your body. And so that's where it's like, even though you have the sciatica, we want to correct that as quick as possible. But our ideal goal is that we remove the interference that's happening in that area of the body so that everything else that's being affected also starts to get better. Now, we're not treating your digestive issues. We're not treating anything along those lines, but it's one of the things, if we can correct the subluxation and then allow the body to start to heal, that's what we're looking for.
Yeah.
And that's, why I love this quote by BJ Palmer. It's nature needs no help, just no interference. And the biggest thing that, I talk to patients about is I was like, we were made to function, right? And so the only time that there's dysfunction happening in the body is when there's a problem, right? When there's some sort of interference that's preventing the body to be working and functioning at 100%. And that can come from a lot of different areas, right? That can come from structural things, that can come from metabolic things, that can come from, that's why we talk about stress coming in the chemical form, the physical form, and the emotional form, because it's all encompassing and they're all very intertwined. So our biggest goal in the office, whenever I'm taking care of any patient, no matter where I'm working on, what I'm adjusting or what I'm recommending, is my ultimate goal is to remove interference in not only your body, but in your life, so that your body has the ability to heal and function as close to 100% as possible. And people ask all the time, well, why do you keep doing what you do? And I'm like, because I want everybody to feel like I do, right? It's not normal. It's common, but it's not normal to be in pain. And it's common, but it's not normal to have digestive issues, reproductive issues, breathing problems, heart problems, right? Headaches, and moving into all these metabolic syndrome kind of things. They become really common, but they're not normal. And so that's one of those things where I just don't want people to grab onto the fact that they have to live like this for the rest of their lives. And so when it comes to obviously chiropractic care, our biggest focus is what can we do to, one, look at the body all encompassing and start to correct it. And so whenever you come in and we sit down with you on your initial visit, we do a full history on you where we check what's gone on in your life. Have you had any other traumas? Did you have any injuries as a child? Did you play sports? Have you been in any car accidents? What does your job look like on a day-to-day basis? Have you had any sort of other injuries? What other potential health issues are going on? What genetically are you predisposed to in your family, right? We go through an entire health history of every organ system in your body, what's been going on, so that we can get the big picture of kind of how well is your body functioning, where's the interference coming from, and then what can we do to start helping you get on the right track. And so not only do we check posture, because posture is kind of the window to the spine. It lets us see not only where is your body currently holding, but what are maybe some of these soft tissue or musculoskeletal compensations that are going on that are maybe potentially shifting the spine or starting to cause interference. We do range of motion, because restrictions in range of motion is a key indicator that something's not working right, or it's not moving like it needs to. Okay. And then, sometimes we'll do a nervous system scan on you to see if there's added tension, muscle spasms. Maybe you have one side that's firing or overactive versus underactive. And then for us, I think one of the best ways to actually see exactly where you're at and what's going on is by taking an x-ray. One, it helps us see, truly what's the compensation coming from? Is it coming from your spine, or is it coming from soft tissue? And then how can we appropriately address that? And then where are you supposed to be? What's normal? And then where are you at? And this is a big deal for people, because we have patients, literally come in from very young ages all the way up to patients in their 90s who have had years of trauma to their spine, whether it be repetitive slips, falls, injuries, arthritis, degeneration, and then even those that are younger. And everyone comes in completely differently. I think I've maybe had one patient in 8 years that literally had a perfect spine before seeing a chiropractor. And I was like, oh, that's impressive. But some of the things that we see a lot of the times is there is a normal position our spine's supposed to be in. Most people know that when we look at you from the front, you're supposed to be completely straight. You shouldn't have any of these curvatures or anything going on in your spine. And from the side, you're actually supposed to have curves in your spine. So those curves in your spine, they protect your discs. They allow for structural integrity. So you're supposed to have a 40 to 45 degree curve in your neck. It's called your cervical lordosis. And then you're supposed to have a thoracic kyphosis, not a hyperkyphosis or the hump, but a proper kyphosis. And then another lumbar lordosis, right? That is how your body works. It's supposed to look like a kind of like a squiggly S from the side. And so there are things that you can see on like x-rays when something is abnormal. And so the x-ray that you're seeing on the left, that is a pretty close to perfect cervical spine right there. It's a 44.5 degrees. So you see it has that little arc in it. You can see that each bone looks like a perfect square, not a pancake, right? And you can see that there is actual spacing in between each one of those bones that's even. So it's showing that there's not degeneration, there's not any sort of arthritis or arthritic changes that are happening throughout the spine. So this is the kind of stuff that we look for. And then you look at that x-ray on the right and you can see that that spine is really straight compared to the other one. So instead of being at a 45 degree curve, this person's at a 4-degree curve. And the other thing that you see on this x-ray is if you see the number, it says 29, that's a number that calculates what we call like that forward head posture. And so what that does is as you start to shift forward like that, it starts to put extra stress on the base of your neck and into the thoracic spine. And so that's why the most common area for people to start having degenerative changes is C5, C6, and C7, which is the lowest portions in the spine, because it's the area that's taking on most of the stress and most of the tension in people. It's also the most common area for spinal surgeries, which is very interesting. Well, it's not very, it's a perfect correlation actually, because if it's had the most tension and most stress on it for the longest amount of time, it's going to start having inflammation, arthritis, and the degeneration. And typically it's the degeneration that will lead to a spinal surgery. And so for us, I think it's important to do our due diligence and see what's exactly going on in people's spines before we start working on them, right? Because I want to make sure that, obviously with palpation and seeing what's going on, what's moving, what's not moving, we can have a pretty good idea of what's going on and kind of where the culprit of most of your problems are. But I would much rather make sure I know exactly where your spine is at, so that there's things that happen, they're called congenital anomalies, so things that you're born with that I might not be able to see or not be able to notice just through palpation, through motion. It would be something that would only be found on an x-ray.
And a lot of the time, patients don't know about them before we take an x-ray.
Yeah, and that's the other thing, because they don't cause pain, they don't cause any issues. Sometimes patients don't know about them. But on our end, it makes it so that, there's very specific things in some of those congenital anomalies or injuries or, maybe old fractures or something like that would completely change how we take care of you. And so I think it's really important to make sure that we know exactly what we're working with moving forward. So one, we can give you accurate recommendations and then talk to you about what we would be able to do to appropriately help you and make sure that we aren't doing anything that would actually cause damage or harm, right?
And sometimes patients come in and they say that they've been told that they have a scoliosis because they had a physical exam for sports. For example, I had a patient that came in with his mom, and he was told that he was not going to be able to play football this season because he developed a scoliosis. So I took an x-ray of him, but his spine was completely straight, and it was just some misalignments within the spine that caused some hypertonicity of the muscles on one side that gave the impression that he had that scoliosis, but he actually didn't. So we did some adjustments to realign the spine, and the muscles started firing properly. His posture was a lot better, and he played football, had a fantastic season, and ended up being one of the best players of the season. So
right, and so that's a big deal. And so it's one of those things like the other reason we take x-ray is because I don't want to guess, right? There's like, for that reason, it's just the opposite. It's like I don't want to guess and not know about something that's going on and actually endanger you. Or in this particular case, that was a perfect example of like we saw exactly what was going on. We knew what the real problem was, and then it allowed this person to continue on with their life and move forward with things that they wanted to do because they didn't have a problem that they thought that they did. Right, so that's a big deal.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that we look at all the time is like subluxation on the x-ray. And so we'll do a very specific series of x-rays because we want to make sure we get the entire spine, make sure that the cervical spine is not causing issues in the lumbar spine and vice versa. And, you know, obviously we take a lot of x-ray classes in school. We are trained to not only take them, but we are trained to read them. And it's one of those things, if we ever see anything on an x-ray that, you know, we also deem that, you know, we've had a patient that didn't know that they had kidney stones is a perfect example. We can see it on the x-ray, and we obviously send it out to the radiologist, and we were able to refer them to the, you know, appropriate get to their doctor, get to the endocrinologist, and make sure that that wasn't something that was going to cause major issues in the future. So for them, it was also us making sure that we're staying on top of their health and helping them move in the right direction and making sure that they don't end up in the hospital or something like that over something they didn't know was going on. So it's very important to actually see these misalignments of the spine and actually check for subluxation on an x-ray. And subluxation is a big word, but it does mean misalignment of the spine that's starting to cause dysfunction or interference, right? And so that's what we look for on the x-ray. Most of the time when you go to like a medical doctor or your urgent care or something like that, when they take a set of x-rays on you, they are trying to rule out pathologies, right? So they want to make sure that there's no tumors, no fractures,
soft tissue damage,
yeah, anything like that that's going on. Our biggest goal is I want to not only rule all of that out, but then if I see misalignment and compensation going on, I want to work on correcting that so that that doesn't continue to be a problem for you. And so in our office, we focus on something called like curve correction. And so when I talked about how important it is to have those proper curves in your spine, not only is that to make sure that we are opening up the spacing in between the vertebrae to allow for the discs to not start to compress or not to have any sort of added tension on them, but we're also making sure that posture-wise, we're not causing, you know, any sort of, like you said, like hypertonicity, hypotonicity. So some muscles firing more than the others and starting to cause imbalances through there. Because as the spine starts to shift, what we see a lot of the time is this anterior chain gets really tight and this posterior chain gets really weak. And then that ultimately will start to lead to an injury. Because then all of a sudden, say you go to the gym or you're out working in the garage over the weekend and you try to lift something that your body's not prepared to do, or it's in a weakened state, that's when you can get a really major injury. And so that's why we also look at that curve correction, because it's very important to see what kind of spinal integrity you have through there, and are you setting yourself up for a potential injury problem, right? And so what I thought was really interesting when I started kind of learning about especially the cervical curve itself, right? So the cervical curve is supposed to be a 40 to 45 degree curvature and the side of your neck. It's called your arc of life. And there was actually a doctor that did a study. He was a neurosurgeon, right? And so he specialized in multiple sclerosis patients. So he had 15 patients that he kind of did a trial with, like a study with. And all of them had been diagnosed for at least 5 years, right? And had multiple symptoms of MS and multiple issues with degeneration, not only just cervical neck pain, but issues going on, right? And so he knew that what that was causing was tension on the spinal cord itself. And as a neurosurgeon, what he knows to do is surgery, right? So he's like, all right, so MS, right? It's a neurological condition. And so this is too much tension on the spinal cord. So the best thing that I know how to do is to actually put that cervical curve back in to this patient's neck to take the pressure off of the spinal cord. So he did it through surgery, right? So he basically fused a perfect cervical curve in all 15 of these patients. At 6 months post-op, 14 of the 15 had over an 85% reduction in all of their symptoms, which was crazy to like see. So he knew like hey, there's a huge problem here. There's tension on the spinal cord. The body's not able to function and it's struggling, right? So all I know to do is what can I do to take tension off of the spinal cord? And so he did that fusion, and these patients saw amazing results. So I look at that in a very similar way, obviously not quite as extreme, but not quite as extreme. Yeah, we're not going to be fused in that, but it's still the process of restoring that cervical curve, taking tension off of the spinal cord and allowing the body to work, removing that interference. And so that's the kind of stuff that, you know, obviously maybe you don't have MS or any other major neurological conditions going on. But if you've got tension in the spinal cord, maybe you've been in a car accident and you've had whiplash relatively severely in that spine, you've lost that cervical lordosis in your spine, and it is putting tension on the spinal cord. That's one of those things that could also be affecting how well your body's functioning. And so if we can help correct that, that's going to ultimately change your life for the better moving forward.
Yeah. So a lot of people are asking what is causing their pains or what is causing their subluxations. Well, and they usually think it's a trauma or a car accident, but it's not just that. It's also from sitting for long hours. It's the lack of movement, lack of exercise, chronic stress, bad thoughts, traumas, and toxins as well. All of that is creating these misalignments, these subluxations. And if you leave them untreated, they can create some degeneration in the spine that can lead to dysfunction within the rest of the body. Stress is affecting how your nervous system is working. So the nervous system is also divided in the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system is the fight or flight response, is preparing your body for a strenuous activity, and your parasympathetic is the one that is controlling your basic function, the rest and digest functions. When you are facing a stressful situation, your body is responding in different phases. That's the stress adaptation theory. So you get exposed to stress, your body is sending the reflexive and automatic physiological response to see us through that threat and into a safer time. So adrenaline kicks in, noradrenaline is secreted, cortisol, and your body is in high alert and alarm to respond to the situation. But we're not designed to stay that way. We're designed to resolve the threat and return to homeostasis. But most of the time we don't. So after we're exposed to that alarm phase, to that stress, our body's energy is starting to decrease. Your resources are depleted. So your natural defenses are also decreasing. You might develop aches and pains. That is a signal for your body to start healing. But you might also be more susceptible to cold and flus because you don't have enough energy to fight it off. And then if you keep on getting the same stress over and over again, you get into the exhaustion phase where your body's energy is completely drained, and you lose the ability to respond to any external attacks.
So I talk to people, it's like when you're in that phase, it's like you could sleep for 10 hours and wake up and you're still exhausted.
Exhausted, yeah. So if your body is overactivated and your sympathetic nervous system is always kicked in, that can lead to increased heart rate, high blood pressure, decreased immune function. So we got to find that balance between the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. Since the brain is controlling every function of the body, if the wrong information is going to your brain, it's not gonna react the right way. So that's where chiropractic care is very important, because it's rebalancing that sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. So it's downregulate the sympathetic when it's supposed to, and it's reactivating it when you're facing a stressful situation.
Awesome. So, like I said, we were created perfect. We just mess it up. And so, that's one of the things. Our body is self-healing. It's self-regulating. The body wants to function. It doesn't try not to, right? And so the biggest thing is we have to figure out is, where did this interference come from? And then what can we do to correct it? And so when we look at it, it's completely changing our mindset to how we approach this. Because the problem that we see all the time is people use the old age excuse, right? Even my age people start to say like, oh man, I hit 30 and all of a sudden I'm falling apart, right? Well, our bodies were made to live to 120, so that's crazy, right? It's not about old age. And so the other thing is when I have a patient come in and they, are telling me about their bad hip or their old hip or their old knee, I kind of joke with them, but I say, I'm like, well, what about the other one? They're like, oh, that one's fine. I'm like, well, your knees are the same age. So obviously there's something more that's going on. It's not old age. It's compensation. It's deterioration. It's an imbalance that's been happening that's been making that joint have to work way harder than the other one, coming from who knows what, especially knees. We always look at the feet and the hips, what else is going on. But why did that knee deteriorate and degenerate and the other one didn't? Because it isn't of old age. It's both, because they're the same age. Mm-hmm. And so that's one of the things that we want to look at. And so it's not normal to completely just degenerate and become arthritic and stop being able to move as you get older. It's not normal to expect yourself to get, more sick or be sick more often as you continue to age, because we are healthy people. And even as you age, you shouldn't be expected to just start to dysfunction, mm-hmm. right? And so that's going to be a big deal if you start taking that proactive approach right now, no matter what age you are, and changing how you approach your health. That's a big deal. And I love watching like videos or seeing news stories of like, 95 and 98-year-old people that are running marathons. The gymnast that is 102 and she's still like a gold medal gymnast. I saw a thing on YouTube the other day about a lady that is 84 and she still competes in like 9 events in the Senior Olympics, and she's got like 100 and something gold medals. Like, it's unbelievable. And it's that kind of stuff where I'm like, the body was made to move. We just have to make sure that we're taking care of it. And that's kind of why, as we're about to kind of transition into the next phase of like ergonomics and what are the small things that we can start doing daily to help with this, I wanted to just kind of bring up the repetitive trauma, because most people think that, oh man, the only way I can hurt myself is from a slip, a fall, an injury, or an accident. And honestly, yes, that does happen, but majority of our traumas or majority of our problems and injuries come from something called repetitive trauma. So there's small things that happen every single day, right? So you're sitting, you're standing, you're lifting, you're moving, and these can, think they could be a small, what you're sitting at your desk. It could be how you're laying on the couch. It could be how you're sitting in the car. So it's these small repetitive movements that you do all day long that can start to cause damage and injuries. And so that's what we're going to work on. What is in your control, mm-hmm. that you can do to start correcting this.
There are some stats about how much spinal issues are starting to cost to society. Back pain cost has risen by 65% in the past decade. It's costing society $85.9 billion a year, which is as much as cancer almost. And most of the people for spinal problems are treated medically. The US is taking 80% of the world's supply of painkiller. It's crazy, especially when there is such a great way to take care of spinal issues through chiropractic, which is a lot cheaper and a lot more efficient, less side effects. So, yeah.
So, things that you can start doing at home. So in the last, let's say 7 months, a lot of people have really transitioned from their workstation to their new home workstation. And so Dr. Jason, Dr. Nico, and myself, I believe, are all OSHA certified now in ergonomics and posture. And so we want to start walking you through some things that you can do to make sure that your home workstation, or even if you are transitioning or going back and forth between the office and home, that your setup is not causing any of that repetitive trauma or damage to your spine that you may not be feeling yet, mm-hmm. right? Or if you are starting to feel it because you thought you were only going to be home for 6 weeks and now it's been 8 months, if you are starting to feel it, now is the time to make sure that we start changing some things so it doesn't become a major issue, right? And so we're going to talk about the ideal position in setting up your like computer screen, where your hands should be, where your arms should be, and then what are some maybe makeshift things you can do at home to correct it. And so most people do know that like we shouldn't be in this like bent over, leaned forward position, you know, shoulders rolled forward, leaning or anything like that. That can cause a lot of stress. Or we shouldn't be in the gangster lean to the side or anything like that. We want to be squared up to the computer, you know, upright posture, shoulders rolled back, head in a nice neutral state, right, without any sort of compensation. So we're going to walk through some things that you can actually start doing at home to correct that. So this is kind of a good setup. Perfect. Okay, so this also goes for your kids. So this is a really big one, especially if we are online schooling, whether you're in college, elementary school, high school, anything like that. This is a big deal. So we also want to take care of children's spines because unfortunately at this point, most of their spines are cartilage. So they are not built or even stable enough to be withstanding long periods of time of bad posture. And I'm kind of worried about that, like long term of what that is going to look like in a lot of children, you know, in the next year or two. Yeah, because they're, I mean, not only are they playing games and on their phones like that, but most of them, if they're an online school, I can pretty much guarantee they're sitting like this, like all day long, right? And so we are rolled forward. We've got the laptop here, or we're doing something like this, right? And we're in this anterior position, which puts too much strain, one, on our low back because it's going the wrong direction, right? We're getting this hyperkyphosis here. Or if you're an adult, we talk about the hump, right? Nobody wants the hump. It's a bad thing. And you're getting way too much forward head posture. And so if you are noticing that your kids are coming home with headaches, or at the end of the day, like kids are getting more headaches or you're getting more headaches, really check what's happening here. Because this is what Dr. Nico talked about. The trap muscles connect right into here. And if you are jutted forward all day long, it's putting way too much tension in that area. So the ideal position, if you want to get, you know, up in here, we want to focus on having that good lordotic curve. So I just think about like pinching your shoulder blades down and pull them together. You want to be in the position to where your arms are appropriately resting right through here. So you may need to lower or raise your chair to make sure that you're at that 90-degree position right through here. And then the secondary thing is the screen. So this screen is actually incorrect. I would not want this because guess what I'm doing all day long? I could be, there we go. I could be in this position, but look what's happening to my head, right? That's a problem. So if you're doing makeshift stuff at home, ideally what you want is for the screen. So, I mean, it could be as easy as this, like you're literally, you go and grab a box from the garage or something like that, or for the kids, right? And you set the screen up right through here. And so this is a lot easier if you have a desktop. So ideally, look, totally different, right? Now the screen is completely eye level. I can sit right here. What I would recommend if you are only working on a laptop is go get a portable keyboard so that the screen can be up high and you can have the keyboard right down here in front of you and staying in that appropriate position. The other thing is the mouse. So I want to yell at and smack them, whoever put the mouse over here on the right side, because what I see a lot of times is people have their mouse way over here, their shoulder is completely extended out all the time, and they start to get what I call computer curve right through here. And so I see it a lot of the time on x-rays, and people are coming in with shoulder pain and this like transition pain right through here, and you see this little angle happening all the time. And so your mouse should be either directly in front of you right through here, or a good rule is make your elbow touch your side and the mouse should not go outside of this radius, okay? We don't want our shoulder out in this position working on the mouse like that, okay? So if you've got kids at home and they are doing a lot of screen stuff but also working, do whatever you can to get their screens up to this position, and all of this also translates to standing. All right, so you want to be able to find a place where you can sit, stand, move around, right? Another really good one for kids is if you can get them on their stomachs, kind of like on like belly time when they're babies, right? Tummy time, because guess what happens? The screen's up, they're in tummy time, and they're in this position in extension, not rolled into flexion like that. So that's a really good way. You can kind of set up a nice little station for the kids. Maybe they do their morning school in tummy time, and then afternoon school is at the desk. But figure out a way to get this happening, not this happening. Some other really great things are you could add a lumbar support to your chair and place it right there, which keeps you in this good upright position, okay? The other thing that we love are our wobble sessions, right? So these are a phenomenal thing to do throughout the day. You can take it on and off. You can sit on it throughout the day because guess what? When I'm sitting on it, I sit up straight because if I slouch, I feel it, right? I know that I'm doing that. It's uncomfortable. Or if I fall forward, I'm going to slide off of it. Or if I lean too much, I'm going to slide the other way. So it forces you to start activating your core throughout the day. And you're actually getting into this nice upright position to where I feel more comfortable and supported with that little lumbar lordosis, that little lordotic curvature happening. And I feel more supported in my shoulders and my neck. And I'm not straining and sitting in this position. The other thing is, guess what it does? It keeps a little bit of movement because you're naturally bouncing around instead of getting so tight and locked up throughout the day. So that's another really good thing that I think is very important is keeping movement throughout your spine. So some things that you can do. So if you have a wobble or if you don't have a wobble, these are some exercises that you can do just to get that mobility through. So if you've caught yourself, maybe you've been on a long conference call or you got locked into a project, and when you kind of checked yourself, you're like, oh my gosh, my posture's been terrible for the last 30 minutes or an hour, or you're getting a lot of tension in your neck or in your low back. Some things that you can do. These are some great exercises. So I love this one for extension. Sorry, it's kind of hard to do on the wobble. But what you do to start stretching out and strengthening your low back is you grab the fronts of your knees, right? Like the very front of your knees. You're going to pull your shoulders back and try and pinch your shoulder blades together. Kind of stick your belly out just a little bit. You're going to tighten your abdominal muscles right through there. And you're going to hold it for about 5 seconds. And then you're going to relax, go back to neutral spine. And then you're going to do it again. You're going to do it about 10 times. That's going to start engaging your core stabilizers as well as your erectors in the posterior spine and start to strengthen this so that it actually feels more comfortable to sit up straight. Because that's the other thing is when we have a weak core and weak erectors, it's really hard to sit up straight for a long time. And that's where I see a lot of people fatigue out and end up in this slumped position. The other thing that we need to focus on is what can we do with our head and neck, right? So because we've been here all the time, or we've been here, or you've been down here in this, we got to start working on what can we do to get our neck into a much better place of extension. So easy things would be even just, I don't even care if you just stand here and you just bring your neck into extension and try to pinch your shoulder blades together. That's a really good one. Another one is you can make a basket with the back of your hands, look up just a little bit, and then try to push back a little bit with the back of your head right into your fingers, and it will start to activate your rhomboids, which are right in between your shoulder blades, and really open up your cervical spine, and also give you a good chest opener. So that's the other things that we see a lot of the times is that our shoulders get really tight because we're rolled forward all the time. So our pec muscles start to spasm out, and what we need to do is we need to stretch those. So the last one would be a really good doorway stretch. So if you get up to go to the bathroom or go get a drink of water, you can find a doorway, put your arms out, and kind of fall through it just like that. And that in itself will start to stretch that across the chest. And for most people, that will really start helping with shoulder injuries.
And it helps you breathe better as well.
Yeah, open that up. Oh, look, next one, shoulders, doorway stretch. Sorry, I got ahead of it. The last thing you can also do is something called wall angels. So you go up to a wall. So I have a flat wall back behind me. You put your arm, you try to make your shoulder blades touch, the back of your head touch, and you do a wall angel where you go all the way up, just like you're making a snow angel when you were a kid, but you go all the way up and all the way down, keeping everything engaged and up against the wall. So those wobble exercises are the ones that we teach here in the office. So the biggest thing is you're going to sit on that little cushion. You can also do this if you have one of the Bosu balls or exercise balls at home. This is really good to do. And honestly, you could even do it from your chair if that's all you're working with. But basically what you do is you go forwards and backwards. And when you come backwards, pinch your shoulder blades together and get into really good extension. You're going to do lateral bending, which these are all of the normal ranges of motion of our lumbar spine. And so these are things that we need to do daily to make sure that we are supporting not only just the joints, but also the muscles and the discs in the lumbar spine. So you do flexion, extension, lateral bending, and then just a little bit of trunk twists or rotation through there. And what that does is keeps just hydration, mobility, increases blood flow throughout the spine, and it'll keep things moving to help ideally prevent things like arthritis and inflammation developing.
And try to take regular breaks as well by standing and walking around every hour at least if you have to sit for 6-7 hours a day, so that you take a mental break and give a break to your body as well.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people don't realize that, like, working from home, they're not getting up as much as they would at work. Because at work, you may have to get up and go talk to a coworker, go drop something off, go grab something, go to the bathroom, go to the break room, grab. And at home, I feel like we make it much more comfortable, and so you're not getting up as frequently. You're not doing things. So I do have some patients that I tell them to set like an alert on their phone that like every 30 minutes it just kind of beeps. And what it does is it just kind of engages them to be like, oh, maybe I should stand up a little bit. I need to move around. I need to make sure that I'm getting some motion and mobility going again. Here we go. Okay. All right. So our joints. And so that's what we're talking about. The motion and mobility. The reason that this is so important is because, we have a lot of people that talk about, arthritis in our joints, and that's in our shoulders and our hips and our knees. And the biggest thing is, our joints are basically the fulcrum where two bones meet and allow for movement. Okay. And so the cartilage is what sits in between the joints, in between the joints and the bones to make sure that there's enough cushion there and allows them to move appropriately. And so the biggest thing is, as long as we keep motion happening, that's going to prevent any sort of arthritis. I tell people all the time that motion is life, and arthritis, it's a big scary word, but really what it means is inflammation of the joint due to lack of motion. So guess what happens when you put motion back into the joint? It's really great. And so that's going to be a good, so if you're hearing, the crunchies, I call them the crunchies. So if your knees pop a lot, you're getting a lot of crepitus or any of that kind of stuff, whenever you move your neck and your shoulders, it's one of those things that is your body telling you that you are not getting enough mobility. And that's why we talk about stretching with our patients every single day, at least getting up, going on a walk, and making sure that we're moving. So we're not putting so much strain on our joints. And because those are things that can degenerate. And once those start to degenerate, that's when we start setting ourselves up for bigger problems. That, unfortunately, if someone comes in and they tell us they got terrible low back pain and we take an x-ray and there's a slither of disc space and there's no joint, left in the knee or something like that, that's one of those things where I wish I would have seen you 10 years ago, because I can't undo that, right?
Yeah.
I can't fix it when that's happened. And so
we can slow down that process, but we can fix it or reverse it.
Yeah. And so that's one of the biggest things where I'm like, if you're starting to notice any of those things right now, it is like, don't wait until it gets so bad that you can't continue, you can't function. Like, it's your body telling you that there's already these signs that are happening of inflammation, arthritis, degenerative changes, and you need to step up and you need to get on top of it before it becomes a big problem, because that's going to make it, as you age, not setting yourself up for hip replacements, knee replacements, and other sort of major surgeries. And so obviously there are supplements out there. I love movement. I think that's a big one, but big one. And especially if you are already in and having that, I love swimming pools. That is going to be one of the best ways to get motion and get your body moving and healing without having to put extra strain. Because that's one of the things that I see patients that'll tell us that I've got arthritis in my knees. It kills my hips whenever I try to walk or run or go work out. And I know, and because of that, I'm gaining weight. And obviously the weight gain is then now putting more stress on my joints and on my discs. And so it becomes this vicious cycle of it hurts, and then my body's responding in the wrong way because I'm gaining weight and I'm putting more stress on it, but I don't know what to do to fix it. And so for me, I love things like a recumbent bicycle. That's a great way just to get mobility and motion happening. I love water workouts. So get in the pool, get non-weight bearing in a pool, get all of your joints moving. It's unbelievable for just how well your body will respond to that. There's also supplements that you can take. So there's a lot of research out there that shows that, just basic things that help with joints. So we know that like hyaluronic acid, we know that collagen, things, these support your cartilage. And so these are going to be things that are by nature anti-inflammatory. And those are things that go directly to your joints, directly to the cartilage in your body, and helps you start to strengthen that. And so we're looking for things that have ingredients in them that are more anti-inflammatory. And so we have some of this stuff in the office, or you can go to, a lot of our health stores around here and you can find a good quality supplement that is going to support you in that realm. All right. So as we wrap up today, I love that. So, obviously this was a fun time about chiropractic and why we love what we do. And BJ Palmer, I opened, he's talked about like, nature needs no interference. Yeah, nature needs to interference. But also, it was really interesting. He's like, medicine is about disease and what causes people to die, right? And that's very true, right? It's looking at symptoms and treating symptoms. And chiropractic is about life and what can we do to help you live a better life. And so that's our biggest goal. It's all about vitality, and we want you to be able to function and to move for the rest of your life without problems. And so that's why it's so important to know what some of these things are, that are precursors to injuries, to degeneration, and to arthritis, so that you can live a healthy life without pain. And that's the biggest thing I see all the time. Pain ruins people's lives. And if we can get you out of pain, we can get your body healing, we can get you functioning and understanding what it is like to feel good and to live the life that you want to live, we've done our job. Right?
So, chiropractic restore movement, and since movement is life.
Yeah, since movement is life. That's what we're doing, right? So we hope you guys learned something. Please ask any questions. We will absolutely walk through home care exercises for you. We will go through any things that we can do for you specifically, based on maybe injuries or issues that you have going on. If you need a recap on what you're supposed to be doing at home and outside of the office, please let us know, because we will always sit down with you, go through your x-rays again, and walk you through what are some specific movement patterns that you need to be doing every single day to make sure that you either don't regress in your care, or you're setting yourself up either posture-wise, positional-wise, or trauma-wise, or injury-wise, for something bigger and that's going to cause harm in the future. So we want to be as preventative as possible when it comes to your health. So we hope to see you guys at our next webinar, where we're going to be talking a ton about nutrition and toxicity. So
see you guys.